I guess we are live. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. My name is, it says we're live. Okay, got it. My name is Jubin with Dana Legal Services, and I'm here with Marta. And we are going to talk a little bit about this issue that everybody's facing, which is vaccinations and whether or not your employer can require it. Marta, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your area of practice and what your focus is.
Hi, I'm Marta Vanegas. Welcome, everybody. I'm the shareholder of Vanegas Law Group. We are an employment and business practice in Walnut Creek, and we are very excited to be here with the fantastic Jubin and his beard. The beard has a separate zip code. So we do both sides of the employment and business side. We are representing both employers and employees, and in business litigation, we both prosecute and defend cases. And we also have a robust transactional practice of, reviewing corporate documents and contracts and transactions and counseling and advising small businesses, very small, like I would say mom and pop size businesses, mostly minority business owners or immigrant business owners who are coming from a foreign culture just like me, and they going through the culture shock of learning everything that's in California and in employment and business law. So that's pretty exciting. I am fortunate that I have a team of talented paralegals and lawyers that I can oversee and strategize with and have tons of fun. But this vaccination topic is not much fun, honestly. Employment lawyers are kind of perverted. We have fun with the weirdest things. So, issues of life and death, disability, alcoholism, that sort of stuff. It comes up quite daily in my practice. Also, we deal with the very dark side of relationships, like workplace discrimination and harassment, retaliation, that sort of stuff. So that's my practice. I love it. I love every minute of it. But my favorite is when I can talk to people about these pressing concerns that are just on the top of the news, such as the vaccination mandates that are coming out now.
Yeah, so even though there's some similarities in our practice in that we serve the smaller entities and early stage companies and things like that, we don't deal at all with this vaccination topic or labor employment. We don't know much about it. So I'm so happy that you're here to help us answer some questions, because a lot of my clients, while they are trying to get a patent or do this, try to get a trademark, they sometimes ask me questions. Hey, I'm running a business, and can I force my employees to be vaccinated? Or they ask me, hey, I work for somebody, and can they force me to be vaccinated? Can my employer force me to vaccinate? So I don't know the answer to that. So why don't you go ahead and tell us, Marta, what you think? If the question is, can your employer force you to vaccinate, or can I, as an employer, force my employees to get vaccinated? What would you advise them?
So I think the word force is a little bit strong, but there is a I think that's a good word because I think that's how people see the issue.
Right.
Also in California, employees are kind of mistaken in their understanding of how immense power their employer has over their personal lives. The employer, basically, because of California is an at-will employment state, can do a whole lot of things, including require that people who work for them and get paid their income for them comply with their health and safety mandates. And the health and safety mandate of required vaccination for a deadly disease that has rampaged the global economy for a year and a half now, close to 2 years, is one of those. So just as your employer can require you to wear a certain outfit because you're otherwise you're going to slip and fall and cause them increased workers' compensation costs. With the same move of the hand waving, they can require you to be vaccinated in order to work on their premises.
Are you saying that because vaccination is the same as wearing safety boots?
Correct. Vaccination is a health and safety measure. And it's not only the employer is entitled to require vaccination, but in some ways they must do this because they are liable to maintain an environment that safeguards the other employees' health and safety. So that's what you know as OSHA regulations. So Cal OSHA and the federal OSHA looks at employers who do not require vaccination the same way as if they did not require that you use properly braced leather when you're climbing up to get something from a high shelf. So when you look at it from the employer's perspective, if they do not require vaccination, they are exposed to this liability that somebody will get sick and that sickness will trigger a workers' compensation claim. And California deems workers who are in the workplace and get infected by coronavirus, right? So there are two facts. One is a worker is in a workplace and the other is they get infected somewhere with the coronavirus. If they were in a workplace, the assumption is, the legal presumption is that they got infected in the workplace and the workers' compensation insurer has to cover it. So I think what is happening now, it's not only the employers are eager to maintain the safety and health of all of their staff by requiring vaccinations. I think they are responding to a lot of pressure from their workers' compensation insurers who say you should require vaccination. Otherwise, your workers' compensation cost is going to increase. They may even increase the premiums if you do not require vaccination, because now you are a higher risk for a claim that is a presumption in California law that you are going to have to pay for COVID infections if the person was in the workplace.
Now, is there anything I can do as an employee that I can sign or a statement I can provide that would allow my employer to say, no, you're okay now, you don't need to do it? I mean, is there a way out of it?
So one thing I need you to understand is that the grounds upon which an employer is required to accommodate your objection to a generally applicable rule are very limited. So a generally applicable rule, for example, in a, say in a law firm, a generally applicable rule is that everybody should be at their desk at 8:30 who is non-exempt, right? So you have to have a pretty good excuse to be special compared to the other employees who have to be there at 8:30. The same is applicable when we are talking about this vaccination mandate. It is a mandate that is generally applicable to all of the other employees. What makes you so special that you can be excused from this mandate? And there are only two grounds that can be given. One is a verified medical condition. So you cannot sign this. Your medical provider has to sign it. And it has to be coming from a medical provider who is certifying that you have a medical condition. I don't think a psychiatric condition of your fear or anxiety would be sufficient. That does not meet, I think, the standard. The standard is if you have an immunosuppressant drug prescription and you cannot be exposed to the virus or mRNA in an mRNA vaccine, or if you are pregnant and it's contraindicated that you get the vaccination right now, then you can get away with that if your medical provider thinks that it is in the best interest of your health. The other condition upon which vaccinations in general, so this is not really special rule for COVID vaccination. It's a rule for any vaccination requirement in a workplace. So the other rule upon which you can say, I want to be excused, is a bona fide religious objection held with a sincere belief, right? So there are two prongs to this. One is that it has to be bona fide. So somebody from your church has to say, this is a religious tenet that we abide by. And then there has to be a demonstration on your part that you sincerely hold that belief and abide by that tenet. So it's not sufficient to say, I don't believe in vaccinations. Generally, I believe that whatever the God will do, if God gives me suffering, I shall suffer. I don't know. I'm not really into that spiritual stuff that much. It's not sufficient. You need to have that religious authority provide the religious tenet backing up your sincerely held personal belief, right? Because otherwise, you would be getting a more favorable treatment than the person on the immunosuppressant drug who had to go to an outside authority, to the doctor, and say, doctor, can I get this vaccine? No, here's your paper. You should be excused. So your own sincerely held religious belief is not going to sufficient. I think an employer would be reasonable to require a medical doctor and maybe even a second opinion on a medical exemption. And they would be probably well positioned to require that your religious leader give you a writing and that you also demonstrate that you do follow, generally speaking, what this church or authority requires of you. I actually researched this, and there are very few religions, I couldn't find one, that prohibit vaccination. There were some in the 50s. They all since then reconsidered their position on vaccination.
Yeah, so it may be a good idea for me to start up my own religion that prohibits vaccinations then, right? But no, going back
it's
to
also
the
a
point
good
today.
way. It's also a good way to make a million. I'm starting the Between Two Ferns religion. Yeah.
By the way, I appreciate your firm. So the 2 points you made was one exemption would be medical and one exemption would be religious, but both of them have to be bona fide. They can't be just, you said it, someone has to, in a position of authority, confirm that. What would be
your political opposition to the government or to your employer vaccination mandate is not going to be sufficient.
It's not going to work. Okay.
Your ideological objection, your belief that you have individual rights, they are not going to be sufficient. And the reason why is that your individual freedom stops when it endangers other people's health or lives.
I totally appreciate that. Now, let's assume that there are, let's assume I'm going to have a talk with my employer, or I'm an employer and I'm going to have a talk with my employee. What are some of the things I should keep in mind, other than these two exemptions, that would be a point of discussion when I discuss this issue with my boss or with my employees?
I think empowering yourself with this knowledge that we just discussed is a good idea. And I think you also need to kind of understand where the employer is coming from in order to have this conversation go bona fide on both sides, right? So in a way, you may feel like a child that is being scolded by your boss, but the idea is that they are just trying to protect themselves and their other employees from very, very bad things that could bankrupt the company or could endanger other people's jobs. So that is where I would come from. If you have a medical reason, then you should start with your doctor. Have your doctor's documentation provided to your employer, and the employer needs to engage in an interactive process to try to accommodate you with some other solutions to make sure that they can keep you and your coworkers safe.
Can your employer just refuse? Say, this is, no, I don't care what your doctor says. Either you get vaccinated or not.
They can, of course, people can do whatever they want at their own peril. I think if you do not accommodate somebody with a bona fide medical excuse, then you run afoul of the disability accommodation rules.
Oh, so then you could face potential legal issues as an employer.
Correct. However, those come up only if you have 5 or more employees. So if it is an extremely small employer, say mom, pop, and 2 employees, and one of them says, I don't want to get vaccinated, the employer is not required to accommodate them in any shape or form. They can be terminated and replaced with someone.
And that's just because of the size, right? I mean, it's nothing else other than just a number, a size.
Yes, that law does not come into play until you are an employer of a sufficient size, because the idea is that a very small employer is already struggling to make ends meet, and they don't have sufficient manpower to replace you in the workplace when they need you in the workplace. So
now let me ask it from a different point of view. Let's say I'm an employer and I've got 3 different ways that people work. One of which is like a telephone answering service that's remote. Can I require those people to be vaccinated, or is there some kind of a change in the rule because they're less in touch with the rest of the company in terms of physical contact?
Right. So I think they do not need to require those employees to be vaccinated. And that brings me to this point that if you have somebody who cannot be vaccinated for their own protection, the best idea is to, if you can, to provide them with telework opportunities. Likely employers who can afford their employees working from home and not be vaccinated will not go the distance of requiring vaccinations unless they require the employees also to come back to the workplace. And even if they come back to the workplace just 1 day a week, they can be required to be vaccinated. So I think that's where the rubber will meet the road. Employers do not like to require a lot from their employees, but I think there were some inefficiencies or the lack of supervision that affected people when they were working from home. And I think people were honestly eager to get back to the workplace and back to a sense of normalcy, even if you have to sit in traffic to get there. It just provided a sense of separation, a sense of compartmentalization for employees. I know that, for example, my employees were like, can we come and work in the office? Because we are just going nuts at home.
Did you require them to have a fern as well, or could they come in without a fern?
No, I give them orchids. So
Okay.
here's he or she, my orchid. Yeah. So I give them orchids from Trader Joe's because budgets. But
I love it.
When they clean their office, they get some potted plants.
Okay, so now let me ask this. Let's say I'm an employee and I provide legitimate medical excuse and my employer is cooperative and they decide to accommodate me. How much do they have to accommodate me? I mean, what is the extent they have to go to, especially as related to vaccine and passing of germs and all of that?
Right. I'm going to have a very lawyer-like answer. It depends. So the standard for accommodating somebody with a medical condition is that they have to do it as long as it doesn't pose an undue burden for the corporation. And if you have an undue burden issue, you as the employer, the employer has to be meticulously documenting why that burden is undue for them.
Right.
And then, so that means it could be a measure of time, it could be a measure of space, it could be just some measure that, we can only go so far. So for example, if they can only accommodate you to telework for 6 months, and then after that, we will reconsider if this is working or not. They can do that if they can document that after 6 months, they just need to kind of at least have you come in sometime to be properly supervised.
Okay, so there is a way that you could set up a temporary effort and see if it's working, and then come back and reevaluate it, both from an employee and an employer point of view, right? I mean, the employee could say, this isn't working for me.
I think they also evaluate it with the rate of infections point of view. So when you think about it, it should be a minuscule amount of employees who had to be staying home because they couldn't get vaccinated. All other employees had to get vaccinated to stay employed. It's an at-will employment. You don't want to get vaccinated, that's fine. Update your resume, find another job, or start your own business where you write the rules.
Speaking of update your resume and find another job, do they have to give you a certain period of time, or can they just do the normal, okay, you have 1 week or 2 week or whatever the normal is?
An at-will employer is entitled to fire you at any time, with or without notice, with or without any reason. So you can be asked to pack your stuff into the banker's box and leave now.
Okay. So they could cooperate with you, give you a little bit of time, or they could end it right then and there.
If they don't pick up their mugs, then I'm going to drink from them.
Very good, very good. So let me ask a slightly different question. If I have a business and I have my employees all cooperating and they're getting vaccinated, what about people that interact with my business as contractors? I mean, like, for example, I hire a janitorial service to come in and clean the office. Can I require them all to be vaccinated? I mean, of course, they're contractors, so it may be an easy answer. I don't know.
No, you cannot require them. You can, if you are the person signing the agreement with the janitorial services, then you can ask them to demonstrate that their staff is vaccinated, or else you will take your business elsewhere.
So you're suggesting that you would be able to control that through a legal contractual relationship, saying, right. Okay.
But it's mostly taking your business elsewhere. So if you have a contract for a term of time, then you have to wait until that contract ends, unless you can consider it established that them not being vaccinated is a breach of their obligation to keep your office clean. You know, if you're a janitor, then probably the requirement is do not infect my office with germs, rather do the opposite. So if they don't do that, then they are probably breaching your contract.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to invite everyone to throw their questions in. And we have one question, and Marta, I'll just read it to you. I don't know if you can see it in the chat as well. It says, what if you get an extremely bad reaction to the first dose? Would that be sufficient enough excuse for you not to get the second dose and get vaccinated? In other words, would that be a good medical thing, or do you still need to go to the doctor?
You would still need to go to the doctor, and the doctor will have to determine if your extremely bad reaction that you said you had is sufficiently bad to excuse you from a second dose. Granted, that first dose provides you with some measure of protection. So I think we were circling around this issue, the timing. So if you got a one dose and everybody around you is double baked vaccinated, then as time goes on and more people get vaccinated, probably due to the government's mandate and lots of employers' mandate, then this danger to you and to others that the virus will continue to mutate will diminish, because we will reach that 75-80% herd immunity that we are aiming for to get out of this situation. So I think as time goes by and more people get immune to the virus due to being infected or due to vaccination, then I think these questions are going to be easier to answer. But you do need to go to the doctor. The employer is entitled to just say, I'm not believing what you're telling me, without the doctor writing, because otherwise I would put you, I would give you a privilege that I'm not giving anybody else, and that can land me in a discrimination claim because I'm treating you more favorably than others.
Now, speaking of treating more favorably, there's another question that came here, and the question basically is this. My employer is giving me an incentive to get vaccinated. However, they removed the incentive, and after that, I got vaccinated. Can I still go back and claim my incentive, or would it be, is that lost cause?
Well, it's kind of like buying the lottery ticket the week after those numbers came out and then saying, hey, I should get the win. No, I think the idea was that those incentives were valid at the time, or it's like an expired coupon. Like there are some businesses that take expired coupons, thank you, Bed Bath and Beyond, but most of them don't. So
it's just a matter of me approaching my employer and seeing if they'll do it. Okay.
Yeah, if they do it, they do it. But if they are like, well, sorry, you're out of luck, then there is no legal recourse for you. You can pout. And as I said, you can always vote with your feet.
Now, the opposite of that question would be, can my employer raise my rates for health premiums and insurance if I choose not to get vaccinated and it's a legitimate reason?
So I saw this, that I think some of the airlines were trying to say that we are going to raise your health insurance premiums that you are paying if you're not getting vaccinated. I did not research this, so that's a very good question. But my feeling is no. You can, though, terminate the employees who do not get vaccinated. So that's like a much more severe sanction to not being vaccinated. But I don't think that the insurance premium argument bears out. Really.
And what if I had a legitimate medical reason? What if I went to the doctor and it was legitimate, and could they then punish me with?
No, then they would fail to properly accommodate your disability, I think, or that would be the argument. Although they could say that, this increased premium is the proper accommodation, but the problem with this is that the insurance premium increasing on those people who aren't vaccinated is not really the right fit for the problem, because the problem is, as long as there is a large population unvaccinated, the virus may mutate. On the other hand, some mutations are good, some mutations are not. So there was a lambda and mu, I don't know, now they are like in Greek alphabet. So there's a lambda and mu variant that is now outcompeted by the more successful Delta variant, and we are happy about that. Why? Even though Delta is super contagious, it's as contagious as chickenpox, which means if you are in the same general vicinity and inhale the same air, you are going to get sick. Because it is so successful, it outcompeted this lambda and mu that were immune to the current vaccinations and would require us to develop new vaccinations. So if you think about it in these terms, I think we are at this right spot where we have this Delta variant that is going to infect a lot of people who are unvaccinated. At the same time, the government is pushing out a mandate for 100 employers or 100 employees or more. And then a lot of smaller employers over 5, are implementing vaccine mandates because of the workers' compensation issue that I mentioned earlier. So I think all of these strategies and the natural course of the disease, I think I see a little hope and like sliver of light at the end of the tunnel. But then remember that mutations can be extremely dangerous. So if this Delta mutates to an epsilon, or theta, I think we are at that is both highly contagious and resistant to the vaccines that we currently have, then we would be back to where we were in March 2020. Remember when we were eating rice and beans out of our pantry because we didn't even go to the grocery store for months.
Right.
And thank God for that 20-pound brown rice that I got accidentally a month before because I was a lifesaver. So I just think that people need to kind of be in this together, and this individual rights argument is very sexy, but I don't think it bears out when your individual rights can be infringed by a lockdown and you're losing your job, and basically everybody in your neighborhood losing their job because we can't go to our jobs.
Yeah, so the one if people want to follow up and ask some more questions with you, Marta, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So my website has my email, so it's martinvanegaslaw.com. I can type it in here in the chat.
Oh, yes, thank you. And while you're doing that, if you can multitask.
And you can always email me at.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what concluding comments would you like to make in terms of, there's medical, there's religious reason, be prepared when you talk to your employer. Well, what concluding comments do you have for people listening?
I think just understanding that we are in this together is a good start. So if you have concerns regarding the vaccine, talk to your doctor or your religious leader first. See what is their wisdom and go from there to the employer. I'm sure that the employer will try to be as accommodating as they can be, because nobody wants to hire somebody to replace you in the workplace, but they have a wide latitude to let you go and replace you if they have to protect their interest, their market share, their business. And rest assured, they will do that. If you have to go, you will have to go to a place that allows you to telework, because basically that's the only thing that that sufficiently isolate you from your coworkers, so you're not a danger to them and they are not a danger to you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for making time, explaining the situation. I learned a lot. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Marta.
I thank you for the invitation. And
sure.
As soon as you get a fern, we're gonna do a second part.
Yes, we'll do our second part with me having a fern too. All
Thank
right.
you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.